So
I'll ask you to dig a little bit deeper into that last question. You said that they're good, because students are, you said earlier on, the students were afraid of posting their stuff because they didn't want to, they weren't experts yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we hear that a lot with student-created content. Well, I don't want my students creating things for the public because they're novices. They don't know the content yet. How did going through this exercise of posting affect both their attitudes about that, and how was the quality relative to the professional quality, I guess?
That's a good question. So the quality certainly got better, as particularly in the graduate class where they were getting feedback and individually, because in the undergraduate class, one team member wrote a post and then they were done, and then the other team member was responsible later on. So they passed some of that feedback on, but it was less one student evolving. So in the graduate class, the quality definitely got better, and you could see that they got more comfortable with sort of the tone, and again, the whole structure is different, the idea of writing a blog versus a paper. And so some of the earlier posts were very much like a typical paper, and there wasn't that voice that you might expect in a blog. So it was reading each other's and then feedback from me that, yeah, it's okay, this is an area where we can insert that. I'm looking for that voice, that got better. And then the content, our students are pretty good. There were a few where I would say, oh, this isn't quite right. And again, in the undergraduate class, we went back on a couple where we had a couple issues where you didn't really cite this work correctly, and it's now on a blog, and someone could see their name, and we kind of want to fix that. So they did have a little bit of editing, and they all, we didn't have any issues where they were not complying with that or where they were balking it. This is helping your grade, we're kind of holding back these points if you can go and fix this. So I didn't have really any concerns with that. I was overall really impressed, actually. We weren't, in the undergraduate class, we weren't sure. And then the content is great. Yeah?
You repeatedly say we. Did you have TAs for this
class? Well, it's sort of a team effort. This class is team taught. The blogs were kind of, I had ownership over this, but my co-instructor certainly was involved. She helped craft the assignment and then did some of the grading as well. She probably wouldn't have done a blog, but anyway, she's a clinical instructor, so she was involved as well. And we had academic technology supporting us. And a TA, actually, in this class, although she didn't do any of the blog grading, but had to respond to emails about, what do I do? In the summer course, I actually was fortunate to have a TA this past year. She also didn't do any of the blog grading, but was aware of the assignment and was, certainly getting emails potentially about what do I do. Tom?
I'm wondering, with the next iteration of this, as you go through, is this kind of writing something that nurses will do in their profession, or is there some way that, because it looks like it's a really valuable exercise, but I just don't know how much nurses, is there some way to tie that to actually the writing that a nurse would do in their, you know what I'm saying?
That's a good question. One of the challenges is that, especially in the DNP program, which is where I think this fits a little bit better thus far, and that's where I'm currently teaching more, so that's where I'm going to be using it. They're going to so many different places, so some probably not. They won't have to write like this, but we can't know for sure, because the idea of, some are going back into sort of advanced practice, some are going into leadership roles, some are going into education. But I think being able to sort of insert your voice or come to a level where you're trying to engage, you could imagine if they're putting together materials for patient education, even if it's not necessarily long, dense text, it's rethinking versus the classwork. Because there's a lot of evidence-based paper, lit review, and you're writing it for the more research academic audience, and so pushing them in a direction of at least considering a different audience, whether or not it's the exact writing style that they'll use with a patient, or perhaps if they're writing something for their healthcare organization or a policy, it might be a little bit different. So I think yes. I'm sorry, Mary, do you have a question? And
I had a question about, I want you to connect sort of your assessment and the comments you made in the blog to the grading. Because since everyone can see the blog, you have to sort of be cautious what you put in the comments.
That's a good point. Actually, I forgot to mention that. I don't want to, let's cancel that. Yeah, so grading this, that was the other point that I had probably in my notes, but I didn't look at them. For the undergraduate class, we didn't really provide any comments on the blog. Maybe a nice job on them, but not all of the grading was done in feedback through Learning UW or D2L. So we kind of read the posts and then created our Word document of comments by blog and then cut and paste those into. So that gets a little tedious. I haven't figured out a better way to do that because of the visibility. And in the other class, I had an Excel spreadsheet, and I had the student's name, their blog link, and then week by week where I was writing their comments. So I'd click on the link, read the blog, put my comments in Excel, and then I actually would email the students the comments because I thought that might be faster for, I don't know if I would do that again. I might go back to Learning UW, do it in there. But you can't, I didn't feel comfortable putting feedback on the blogs because the students are expected to look at each other's and it is public. So the comments were all separate, which is an extra step and is a little bit more time consuming. So that's something that if anybody has any suggestions on how to do that better.
Password protect comments? I mean, I know you talked about password protecting other aspects of the
I
law.
don't think you can password protect comments,
Or send a direct message.
but I also emailed the students for feedback, and mostly it was, can you dig into it a little bit more? I actually never gave them, I used the D12
Yeah,
grades as well.
yeah, their grade was certainly nothing related to their grade was on the blog,
Right,
but
grading is D12, but I'm just trying to figure out if there's, you can integrate it into the blog
Yeah.
without it being available to
I mean, I suppose if they all had it so they were moderating their comments and they could choose not to approve that one or not to post that one, you might be able to do that through the blog. But again, and I guess I would say that disclaimer up front, make sure the students are really clear, like I'm going to provide you feedback and you do not have to post this and you have this, you've all got your comments set up right, but this is the way that I'm going to do it. I might get them to, one, make sure they're checking their comment moderating because they're going to be looking for their grade feedback. But so that might be one way to do it. I'll probably stick with the same this year, and then once I get really frustrated with this is a little tedious, see if I can improve that.
Well,
Sorry, one more question.
I have two very different questions. So first of all, just building on the question about will they do this professional writing or this kind of writing in the profession? So, but did this writing help them understand the content of the class better? Like what kind of grades did you see in the other stuff they were doing in the class? Like did this help them get better grades in other areas of the class? And then also, I'm curious, so like what happens the next time you use this? Are you gonna let these students, the new students, see the old blogs? And are you gonna build a kind of a community of this class?
So this summer will be my second time using it for the informatics class, and I did ask a number of the students from the last summer if they were willing to leave their blog open and if I could share it with the new students. And so a number of them did. I probably have 10 that I probably asked 12 and 2 had already taken it down, and 10 that did well, that I'd say this is one you want to look at. And so I haven't figured out yet if that will become sort of a community, but certainly I would encourage if the students in the new semester have a comment or are intrigued by something that I'll say that these people are still, their blogs are live, so if you have something that you think is interesting, you could comment back to someone from a previous semester and see if that starts a conversation at all. It may, because they're interested in how their careers, their scholarly projects are evolving. How did you build on this? What happened after the blog officially ended?
And you're entering into peer mentorship.
Right.
Too,
So it might happen. I don't know yet. I'm going to try it this year and say they're there, and many of these students are still here. They're still in the program, so this might be an opportunity to sort of get that feedback. In terms of how well it sort of helps them perform or grasp the content in the course as a whole, in the undergraduate class, this was a good chunk of their grade. It's an interesting class in that it's not really, it's professional development, if you will. It's ideas. It's getting them to think beyond the licensure exam that they have looming, and so to think about, you're going to be in practice, quality matters, what's that going to mean to you? How do you communicate with other members of the healthcare team? How do you communicate with other nurses? What's the organizational structure? How does that impact nursing practice? So getting them to engage in those ideas and really take some ownership of them was a victory for us, because they see it as like, I don't want to be in this class, I want to study for my NCLEX, which is the exam that I have to pass to be a nurse. Once I'm a nurse, then I can worry about this stuff. So, we did see them engaging and starting to apply and looking up resources, and whether or not that then translates, the bigger question would be, when they get to practice, was this more meaningful than other assignments in terms of, oh yeah, I had that class, and there was something that I learned there, and that's actually preparing me to be here. In the informatics class, I truly believe that they wouldn't have, this really helped their understanding of the material, because each person had a different area of interest, and informatics doesn't fit the same way for each person's area of interest, and so they had to figure out how it fits. They had to talk about why it doesn't fit. So each week as we went through informatics content, this isn't actually appropriate to what I'm interested in because it's not relevant, and here's why. And so otherwise I think they're just kind of going through the motions. They don't like that class. They don't see it applying to them. So I really believe that it helped their overall. And many of them wound up saying, oh my gosh, I totally see how I use informatics. It's relevant. I think it was a really good fit for that class, not only for what I believe is important content, but to get them engaged. And it was hugely effective for that. I don't know if that answers your question, but we didn't really have any other huge assessments. This was a huge part of their grade in that class. All right, I went over my time. Got to do your assignment now.
We still have time to play, I think, right?
Oh, goodness.
So
That was great. Thanks for sharing.
you should have all gotten an email
I take this off.
and add a post to the application lab blog that you should have access to that looks like this. You should all see yourself there, because I took a picture of you and I posted it there. So like, this is your space. So once, no, I want you guys to all do that, and the way to do that, we added you all as editors. There's a possibility that I saw stuff as an administrator that is different than what you will see as an editor. So if things don't look exactly the way that you see them, the way that they're posted here, you might have to do a little bit of work on your own to do some translation. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand and add a post to this. And then one of the things that I think Linsey talked about was the students typically, when you start to type in WordPress, it's a little bit weird because it has its own WYSIWYG editor that's a little bit clunky. And so oftentimes the students will be like, I prefer to write in Microsoft Word. So let me write in Microsoft Word, and I'll copy that and I'll paste it into WordPress. And sometimes that's dangerous because Microsoft Word has all these hidden codes in with the stuff that you don't see when you copy and paste. But then when you paste it, the formatting's all wonky. Sometimes it's good because you want it bolded, you bolded it in Microsoft Word and you want it bolded here. But sometimes there are like these weird things that happen. So one of the exercises in this things to do here is to try that, copy and paste into WordPress from another document, whether it's Google Docs, whether it's WordPress, whether it's WordPerfect, whether it's some of these other documents that you prefer to write in, and see what happens, and then make some changes. So feel free to do that. I'm also going to say that I had my students do one for the Wisconsin Experience class and had them do posts, and I tried to say each post should have a picture, and it was just like 1 or 2 paragraphs of reflections, or a picture, a paragraph, and some takeaways, or a YouTube video and a paragraph and some takeaways. But telling them, I made sure to tell them that I don't want to see a 5-page paper as a blog post. I want to see something very succinct. Not quite a Twitter post, not a tweet, but something between a tweet and a 5-page paper would be best. And having a graphic on there is good as well. And then I had a bunch of different categories. Oh, I I also had them tweet on the side there. You can see the Wisconsin Experience tweets, and I just had them follow a hashtag, so that was on the blog. And that way they could go to the blog and see different forms of communication. And then I added a bunch of different categories. So, let's see. Doing one on study skills, where they had to find a YouTube video on study skills, and then a paragraph and some takeaways.
John, what's the difference between categories and tags? Because I noticed that WordPress has the capacity to do both.
Yep.
But I'm familiar with tags. I mean, I get the concept of both of them, but I don't know how they're different.
The nice thing about categories for me is I can have them on the side here, and they can say, this post is about the TED Talk assignment, and so if I wanted to find all the posts on the TED Talk assignment, I just click on that, and I didn't have to wade through all of the other posts about their cats.
And you can't do the same thing with tags?
I think you can with the tag cloud, but tags, they can create their own tags, so you can create a tag on anything.
Exactly the same as what.
And so there isn't that uniformity that
Okay.
categories offers.
So categories are limited by the administrator, and tags can be created by anybody?
Yep.
George is looking at me like,
Well, one big advantage would be that categories allow you to create a separate RSS feed, so someone can subscribe to your blog, but only read posts in one category, not everything. So you could have something that's on a specific topic, and I just want to read that, I don't want to read everything else.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's say you're requiring, as in this other assignment, people to post on each other. Is there a way, once you're looking at it, to search that student and see all their posts and have it all aggregate for you, so you don't have to kind of hunt and catch? Remember me?
Yes. And I think the answer is yes. Let me go through David Zimmer. Yeah, you just click on David Zimmer, and there are all of his posts at the top.
Okay. So you get one.
Yep. So it was pretty cool. So right now, you guys should all be creating posts in the Active Teaching Lab thing.
John, there's a new post with an interesting question.
There are. Okay, let me go check that out. Let's refresh. WordPress integration. Curious to find out more about what possibilities exist for integrating a WordPress site with a NetID or Learn at UW site login pass-through.
That's me.
Well, let me tell you what I did for my Learn at UW site. I have this class, Counseling Experience Seminar, in D2L, and this is going to look super familiar. Oh look, it's my WordPress site that is actually with the banner and the D2L site. So I put all of my assignments and announcements and all those sorts of things in this. They could access it through the D2L site, or they could access it without going into D2L. The advantage of accessing it with D2L is they also have the gradebook right there, and so it ties in.
It's so he made his WordPress his homepage. It's like a very
So
easy
easy to do
process.
too.
So this is, you don't have to, you're not double posting things, it just
You're
puts the
not
WordPress
posting, you're just
right.
accessing it within.
It's like an iframe,
It's
essentially.
like, it's basically an iframe
Yeah.
that takes the whole thing. Like I said,
If you do that, does that mean that all of your content, and if
It's
you want to give students a
protected.
PDF, does it all have to be on the WordPress site then, or can you use some parts of Learn at
You can
UW?
use some parts of Learn at UW as well. So the class list, the UW tools, I could still put in Google Apps or My UW or Madison Box, or I could have had the discussion list in here too if I wanted to force them into that.
What if I wanted to give them a PDF and say, here's this PDF to read?
Super easy to put a PDF in WordPress, but you could also have course content in your D2L site as well.
And link to it from there.
Yep.
Digging a little deeper into this, so does that mean that your WordPress site for this course is pretty much publicly available?
Yes.
So it's not really integrated with the NetID login. It's just
No, it's just that,
framed in.
yes,
Yeah.
they don't have to be like, now what is the WordPress site and what is my D2L site? Like, they don't have to go to those different things, and we always hear from students, don't make me go to all these different places.
Right.
So
Right,
this way they
yeah.
can just go to D2L with all of the other courses, and they're here.
So
Essentially linked.
It's essentially linked within D2L, yeah.
are there options, and maybe George, you could address this as well, if there's, because you said that nursing had a WordPress account, and I know that Do It, you can pay for hosting for a WordPress site. I guess I'm wondering what all of the options are for having a WordPress site that requires a NetID login to be able to access it. You've got a weird smile on your face with that.
This one it says.
Sorry.
Oh, that's easy. It's super easy. I can do this.
I was hoping George was going to
That
answer
means
that
I
question.
get to. You get to, like,
No, I
everybody
think
can
the
have this.
straightforward
Like,
answer
change the
is,
button.
well, unfortunately, we don't have a university-wide supported WordPress instance.
Right.
Which means that when you go to WordPress.com, and that's one of the panic moments that we had, that Linsey had, and we were dealing with, was at some point they started just disappearing, and then luckily we have our academic technology blog is a paid account, so I have the chat. So I went to chat and would talk to the people at WordPress.com, and they said, here's where you go, here's what you fill out, and it helped us. But there's nothing we could do if they decided not to reinstate those blogs. There's no one at the university that you can go to and say, bring it back. We didn't control
The
that.
campus is looking though, right?
Well, so we are one of the only campuses in like this consortium that does not offer like faculty's blogs
Right.
through WordPress or Google Sites or some platform of like, I don't know, the top 20 of our peers or whatever. So that is something that is definitely on the radar. It's just another thing that they're like, well, if we do that, then we have to support it.
Because I know they're looking at it with the NetIDs.
Yes.
We're thinking of using it with NetIDs. So I know it's on the horizon.
Yeah, and I imagine that will happen eventually, but I don't know what the platform would be.
That's great.
So just a question more from a practical standpoint, and I hate to bring this nasty topic up, but with the budget cuts, I mean, is this something that's really expensive for campus to support and to get, I mean, or are we, I don't have a concept of sort of what the infrastructure needs to be behind the scenes to support this.
Yeah, very good question. This is not a supported UW tool.
But I know, but if we are, I thought we were hoping to move in that
If
direction.
we move towards it, I don't know how much support it would be.
Okay.
Probably the cost of support, because the tools are a lot more straightforward, I think, than D2L or some of these other platforms. So the easier the tool, the less it costs to support it.
Okay.
I don't know how much a license costs for campus. These are good questions.
I'm sorry, one more. How, with using the WordPress site as your home page, are your grades still, because that's publicly available, are your grades still protected?
Yeah, two different things.
Okay.
The Learning UW page is only if I log in through D2L, it has the red banner on top, it has the grades and this sort of stuff on top.
Okay.
If they wanted to just see the Wisconsin Experience site through WeX 2014 at WordPress.com or WordPress.com, this is what the public sees.
Got it.
And part of the reason that I did this was I wanted my students to be able to share their work with their grandparents and with their family back home as part of the Wisconsin idea. So that they could say, hey, mom, dad, brother, sister, whoever, friend, look at the cool stuff that I'm doing. Like, check out this cool poster that I did on vermiculture and blah, blah, blah. And it's a way for them to have that conversation at Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever holiday when they go back and say, you know, because they're not going to like share, here's 5 papers that I wrote. But they might say, here's some cool stuff that I'm doing here because I've got a cool graphic and blah, blah, blah.
Do you know if any of them have shared it on like their own private social media? Like,
Yes.
have they posted it like on their Facebook page and have people?
So one of the things that I also do is I have them do the Twitter on Twitter on the side. It's like a dance. Using the hashtag WeAsk for Wisconsin Experience. And a lot of last year, all of my students had Twitter accounts. They came in and they all had them before I made them set it up. This year, all but 2 had them set up. So those went out. There was one person this year who said, I don't want to use my personal Twitter, and he set up his own. And that's perfectly fine. As long as I know what his account is, I can give him credit for these things. But yeah, so I saw a lot of those on their personal things. Now, was it just because I asked them to? No, because I saw some that were not hashtagged for Wisconsin Experience. So they weren't doing it for credit. They were